Today I'm going to share with you my latest original melody. This melody uses only 3 strings, strings 1, 2, and 3, or you can also look at them as strings A, E, and C. We're not going to use our 4th string or our G string at all in this melody, so whether you have a high G or a low G, it doesn't matter because we won't be using that string. This is a beautiful arrangement that starts in the lower part of the neck, between frets 1 and 5. Then we'll move up to frets 7 and 8 in the middle section of this melody, and then back down to the lower section once again. So learning this melody will give you great practice in developing your finger-picking skills as well as navigating around different parts of the neck. Now I'm going to play through this melody for you as a demo, and then in our tutorial we'll walk through how to play it step by step with the tabs on screen. If you'd like to download the tabs, you can do so from my Patreon page, along with my book of tabs and my songbook covering all of the songs that I've shared in my tutorials. If you're not yet familiar with how to read tablature, then I'll put a link above to my lesson that walks you through it so you can learn how to read tabs. For the first 7 measures of this melody, we're going to play a finger-picking pattern that starts on the 2nd string, then goes to the 3rd string, back to the 2nd string, and then down to the 1st string. This will repeat twice in each measure, so playing this on all open strings looks like this. You can use whatever fingers of your right hand you prefer to pick these strings. Generally, I play this pattern with my index finger on the 2nd string, my thumb on the 3rd string, back to my index finger on the 2nd string, and then finishing with my middle finger on the 1st string. We're starting off our first measure with our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string and our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. We'll play our full pattern of 2, 3, 2, 1 twice. And then in measure 2, we'll play our same pattern, this time adding our pinky on the 5th fret of the 1st string. Measures 3 and 4 are identical to measures 1 and 2. In measure 5, we're keeping our index finger in place on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string and placing our ring finger down on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. We'll play strings 2, 3, 2, 1. And then for the second half of measure 5, we'll lift up our ring finger, opening up the 1st string. In measure 6, we're going to a G chord. So I'm placing my middle finger down on the 2nd fret of the 1st string and my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. In measure 7, we're keeping our index finger in place, and we're also going to play the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. So moving from our G chord in measure 6 into measure 7, we can either move our ring finger back 1 fret, or we can lift up our ring finger and place our middle finger down on the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. In measure 8, we're going to pick the 3rd fret of the 1st string, followed by the 2nd fret, and then the open 1st string. When we get to the end of measure 8, we're going to repeat measures 1 through 7, and then we'll go to measure 9. In measure 9, we're going to play our 3rd fret of the 1st string, and then move up to the 5th fret. You can do this either with your ring finger or with your pinky, whatever is most comfortable. In measure 10, we're going to a different pattern. This pattern is similar to the one that we've been playing, but it's 1 note short. So we start on our 2nd string and we play strings 2, 3, 2, 1. And then we play strings 2, 3, 2. So the full pattern on all open strings of this 2nd pattern looks like this. In measure 10, we're starting on the 7th fret with a G chord shape. So I have my middle and index fingers on the 7th fret of strings 1 and 3, and my ring finger on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. Here we'll play our 2nd finger picking pattern. In measure 11, we're moving our index finger down to the 5th fret of the 1st string, and our middle and ring fingers to the 7th fret of strings 2 and 3. In measure 12, we'll place our middle finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and our pinky on the 5th fret of the 2nd string. In measure 13, we're going to a G chord, and we have a slight variation on our 2nd pattern. Our final note will be on our 1st string rather than our 2nd string. So on our G chord, we'll start measure 13 by playing strings 2, 3, 2, 1. Then we'll play string 2, string 3, and for the final note in measure 13, we're placing our pinky down on the 5th fret of the 1st string. Measures 14 and 15 are identical to measures 10 and 11. The first half of measure 16 is played the same way as the first half of measure 12. For the remainder of measure 16, we'll lift up our pinky and middle finger, keeping our index finger down. We'll play our 2, 3, 2, 1 pattern. And then moving into measure 17, we're going to a G chord. we'll play our 2-3-2-1 pattern on G, and then we'll finish measure 17 on our second string. Measures 18 through 23 are identical to measures 1 through 6. Measure 24 is played the same way as measure 22, but we'll start slowing down the tempo as we're approaching the end of this melody. In measure 25, for our final chord, we're going back to G, and we'll pick strings 1, 2, and 3 together. I hope you've enjoyed learning this beautiful melody on 3 strings. Have fun practicing, and thank you for watching.